Looking back, it may seem like I'm more of a PS1 fanboy, and true, the PS1 houses several of my favorite games of all time, but it's hard to deny that the era between 1998 and 2006 was a true golden age for gaming. That has many reasons, but much of it was because it came between two extremes of the industry, the dawn of 3D and the dawn of HD. The transition to 3D was awkward at best, with many great games that took advantage of the new technology and many games that crashed and burned. But by the time the 6th generation rolled around, or at least by 2001, developers had gotten to grips with 3D technology enough to really start experimenting with what games could be, and suddenly you had daring and exciting new games that broke the mold and showed us more and more what the possibilities were for video games coming out all the time. Here's a list of games that came out in 2001 alone: Max Payne, Devil May Cry, Pikmin, Luigi's Mansion, Grand Theft Auto 3, Ico, or however you want to pronounce that, Halo Combat Evolved, Silent Hill 2, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3, Metal Gear Solid 2, Final Fantasy X, Sonic Adventure 2, Super Smash Bros. Melee, Jak and Daxter The Precursor Legacy, Fatal Frame, and Super Monkey Ball, just to name a few, all in 2001. You had the technology that within some limitations you were able to pretty much do anything with these new consoles. Sure, 480p and in some cases 480i was the standard resolution, but the games were all that mattered, and there were so many amazing games being created because you weren't really limited by technology anymore. But these days you're not really limited by technology either, so what makes this generation specifically so great? It was when the stars aligned for a vast majority of gaming. Before this, you had technology limitations, and so compromises had to be made with many games. But these days, the limitations are usually with budgets being too inflated to pump in true-to-life pristine graphics that are so fucking important, but the 6th generation was where technology, graphics, budgets, and gameplay all aligned perfectly so that pretty much anything was possible and still affordable. Like I said, technology for the most part was now good enough that you could theoretically do anything, and the potential for graphics was as good as it needed to be true enough to life to be believable, but also not be so high quality that you had to sacrifice gameplay. So you could make games that succeeded in every aspect for the first time and not break the bank, and it was glorious. You could have daring, new, and experimental ideas be greenlit because even if it were relegated to cult classic standards, chances are they would never cost so much that the publisher would lose money. You could have experimental, reasonably priced games that made a moderate profit and really fucked with you. Let's be honest, something as weird as Killer 7 would never be greenlit today. Not by the standards of technology we have and the money it would require. Something like Silent Hill 2 or Bully or Psychonauts or Metal Arm's Glitch in the System couldn't have been made in the past due to limitations, but also couldn't be made nowadays because they're too niche and out there for publishers to really give it the green light with how expensive making games can be in the AAA industry nowadays. Anything that isn't safe enough because they need to squeeze every penny out of games to make any level of profit. On that note, these days you can make money via so many avenues: DLC, microtransactions, loot boxes, pre-order bonuses incentivizing pre-orders, but the 6th generation was the last generation where you didn't have widespread internet support and especially hard drive space, and so there was no way for developers to nickel and dime you after the fact. There were two ways to make money: be attached to an established brand or just be good. Games had to be finished because if they weren't finished, you had a broken, glitchy mess and there was no way to patch it. Word would get out and nobody would buy it, so developers and publishers couldn't really be scummy, nor could they really patch games beyond a second version. So they had to give customers what they wanted generally to make money, nullifying a lot of what's standard in the industry today. Speaking of widespread internet, this was also back when multiplayer was a bonus on top of the main game rather than the full game, because not everybody had internet, and so if you focused a game on multiplayer, it would bomb because you'd be alienating most of your buying audience. It was also where we pretty much mastered many genres and were able to make the best of these genres. This is where we learned how to do proper console first-person shooters with the likes of the Medal of Honor series or Metroid Prime, but you also had proper tactical shooters, third-person shooters, sandbox, racing, action-adventure games, and more, all reaching their stride as both developers got down a standard control layout for most of these games and as technology allowed them to be everything that they could be, so you had the very best games could be mechanically and the mastering of controls.